Welcome back to Beauty from Ashes. And today is episode 3. I have been preparing to talk about the day that everything changed. But if I'm being completely honest with you, um, things changed again just about 24 hours ago. So, yesterday, I was on the phone with my oldest son and we were talking through a pretty stressful situation. Um, Nothing we can't handle, nothing that will not pass. But mid conversation, a few words that he said just basically suffocated me. Without warning, I was pulled right back into the very last conversation that I ever had with Gavin. I had an emotional crash out. And that is the part of grief that just completely fucking sucks. When I talk about the day everything changed, I'm not just talking about the date on the calendar. I'm talking about the aftermath of it all. How a normal Monday morning phone call can suddenly trigger an emotional landmine that you just never saw coming. And for me, when that happens, I literally just shut down for the rest of the day. I lose all motivation. I need to isolate. I will cry unconsolably for however long it takes. Um, but yeah, grief changes everything. Who we are, how we react, like how we breathe. So before we dive into the story about the day my world crumbled, I just wanted to share a little bit about yesterday because, you know, this deep, raw, unpredictable pain is the reality of the aftermath. This episode is going to touch on some very sensitive moments. So please mind your heart, prioritize your well being, um, and listen with care. Now, let's talk about the day everything changed. So it was a Thursday afternoon. Um, to preface things, my schedule at the time was like 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I generally had to be to work around 4:45. So, with that being said, I woke up that day, went to work. I did not get a text or a call from Gavin that morning, and I did not expect one because he had told me on Wednesday. Actually, maybe it was Tuesday. Hold on. I still have the text messages in my phone. So it was Tuesday. So on Tuesday, he told me that he was going to, um, and that he was going to rest. He had been sick. He was going to rest, and he had a meeting that he didn't really want to go to on Thursday. But, so he was going to rest up so that he could go to the meeting and take care of that. So, no big deal. I wake up, I go to work. I come home from work a little bit early and I get home about 1:15, and I do what I did every single day. I lay down on the couch to take a quick nap before I have to start dinner. And I remember looking at my phone to see what time it was because I was going to set an alarm just in case I slept longer than I wanted to. Um, and there was a message from a friend of my oldest son, Darius. So I was a little confused because Darius's friends don't message me, but I opened up the message and it said, "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to know if um, Gavin changed his number. Applebee's is trying to get in touch with him and he's not answering. So I didn't know if maybe he changed his number." And immediately after reading that message, I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I called Gavin and his phone was going straight to voicemail. I called him again and his phone was going straight to voicemail. I immediately got up off the couch and I started pacing and I was panicking. For a moment, I could not think straight. And I was like, okay, what do I need to do? So at this point, I have my mom gut telling me there's something absolutely 100% completely wrong. I have my training in law enforcement as a mental health officer telling me that there's something wrong. I have my education, which I have a master's degree in human services counseling with a focus in crisis response and trauma. So I have my education background telling me that something is wrong. And at that time, my sister sends me a message also like, "Hey, have you talked to Gavin? I'm trying to call him, but he's not answering." And so I let her know that, you know, John had messaged me and this is what was going on. And I said, I'm about to call the Hobbs PD to go do a welfare check. Well, I don't remember exactly what was said right then, but I know that she did at one point tell me, well, he's probably just asleep because, he's been really sick. And, I know he said that he wanted to rest and be able to go back to work and feel good. She's like, he's probably just asleep and is not answering the door or not answering his phone. And in my mind, I was basically like cussing everybody out. Like, how the hell do you mean? Like, he's probably just asleep. Like, no, that he's not just asleep. So I let my husband know what was going on because he was at work at the time. I believe he had maybe actually just gotten home because he had an appointment or something, because I know he did leave the house, and I don't remember if it was a doctor's appointment, a hair appointment. I don't remember, but I know he had something going on because he did come home and he ended up leaving. My youngest son left for work shortly after that. I went into my closet. Don't ask. I don't know why. And we had a walk-in closet at the time. I went into my closet and I remember calling the Hobbs PD and just asking them to do a welfare check. I gave them his address, his phone number, the vehicles that he drove. Um, and I waited. I then called Applebee's and I spoke to someone. They gave me their rundown of, you know, he didn't show up. Um, he's never late. He's always early. This isn't like him. We can't get a hold of him, all of that. So, speaking from my officer experience, I told them, can you please call the Hobbs PD and have them request from them a welfare check and give them all of this information, all of the information that you have currently, and everything you can tell them about his regular, habits there at work. And so they were like, okay. So now it's been like an hour and I'm literally trying not to lose my shit. So an officer from Hobbs calls me and I'm letting them know everything. But I let them know first. I said, I'm a former law enforcement officer. I was my department's mental health officer. I need you to understand my concerns are not just as a mom who can't get a hold of her son. So I gave them some background on Gavin, some things that we had been working through, the struggles that he had been talking to me about that on the surface didn't seem like anything that we couldn't get through together. Or, with him just having a little bit of support. And I gave them a little bit of his history as a child. Because what a lot of people didn't know at that time is that, Gavin used to self harm because he didn't know how to regulate the emotions that he was feeling. So, given all of that, the officer is like, okay, well, we're here at his apartment. He's not answering. What vehicles does he drive? Gave him the vehicles. Okay, well, they're both here. And when they told me that, I told that officer, I said, you guys are going to need to get permission to breach the door. I said, I'm telling you, you need to get permission to breach the door. So he says, well, let me go make contact with the people at Applebee's because I'm just getting information from my dispatch that they have also called. So I said, okay. And those waiting moments were the longest moments of my life. I remember reaching out to my former sergeant back in Fort Worth and telling him what's going on. And I remember getting pissed off because he was like, well, let's not automatically assume the worst. But I think he was just trying to keep me sane and focused because he knew why being the mental health officer in the community I worked in, he knew that part of my interest and passion for that had everything to do with my personal life and the things that my kids were going through, had gone through, things that I was going through, had gone through. Um, so at this point, I'm at home, I'm alone, and I'm losing my mind. Why is nobody calling me back? Like, why is this taking so long? Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, these are all things going through my mind. Why is everybody trying to make this seem like it's not as bad as it is? And my husband gets home and I'm explaining to him everything that's gone on. But before he got home, I had two friends back in Roswell that I was communicating with. Um, both of them ready to just get in their car and drive the 70 miles to go see what is going on. Because clearly they're in New Mexico, I'm in Florida. And, I finally calmed down a minute and I was like, no, my law enforcement hat came back on. And I was like, no, just give me a little bit and I'll let you know. I was like, because, I just need to wait. I know these things take time, but at the same time, the amount of time it was taking, I think my heart already knew that this was a death investigation. And at the same time, my experience in law enforcement was also telling me, you know how long these things can take. You know if it's an unattended death or any type of investigation going on, it's going to take some time. So by now, it's like 5 o'clock, and I get a call from the Hobbs dispatch. And the girl, she just asks me, she said, hey, the sergeant is wanting to talk to you. So he asked me to get some of your information so he can call you back. Mind you, I give her the information, but at the same time, I'm thinking in my head, I've already given you this information. when I called you guys to request a welfare check, I gave you all of this information other than my address. So when she asked me for my mailing address, I was like, okay, I get it. I get off the phone. And then that's when my husband got home. And I'm telling him what's going on. And I said, I'm just waiting for Tampa PD. And he's like, what? What do you mean? And so I told him, I said, I know Tampa PD is going to come and give us a death notification. And he just stayed quiet because I think he knew that I already knew, like from the get up. And he's just sitting there, and then there's a knock on the door. And I don't remember any names of anybody. I had them all written down on a piece of mail that was on our coffee table. And we'd moved, and I couldn't tell you what happened to that piece of mail. It's probably somewhere, but I don't remember the officer's name. But I'll never forget the look on his face and the look in his eyes that told me how much he did not want to be standing on my front doorstep that night. But he delivered the notification with true, genuine compassion. And it was just very direct. But his tone and his demeanor, like he knew how painful that this was going to be for me, the mother of this child. And I remember asking him, well, can you tell me what happened? And he said, no, ma'am. He said, I don't have those details, but once I relay this message back that the notification's been delivered, someone from the Hobbs Police Department will get in touch with you. And maybe 5 minutes after he left, I got a call from a detective with the Hobbs PD, which again, I don't remember his name, but I could tell by the tone of his voice that this was not a phone call that he really was looking forward to making. And so he's telling me a little bit about, you know, the unfortunates. And he asked me, he said, did you give him a bracelet? And I said, yeah. I said, why? I said, I had just given it to him last weekend when we were in Roswell. I said, why? Was he wearing it? And he said, no. It was in his hand, and the case was on the table. Now, I ordered that year for Christmas, I ordered each one of my kids a bracelet. And give me just a moment and I will find the order and tell you what the bracelet, what it said. So each one of the bracelets that I got the boys was like a leather banded bracelet with some beads. And they were all a little different, but inside the box, it all said the same thing. And it said, "To my son, never forget how much I love you. As you grow older, you will face many challenges in life. Just do your best. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's all about learning how to dance in the rain. Every day may not be good, but find something good in every day. Laugh, love, follow your dreams, believe in yourself, and remember that I will always be with you. I love you, son." And that moment still gets me every time I think about it. And then I asked the most important question that I needed to know at that point. And I said, "I just need to know one thing." I said, "Was there foul play involved?" And he got quiet. Because at this point, there were one or two things in my mind. Gavin had either taken his own life or Gavin befriended somebody that he believed was a good person and they harmed him. Those are the only two likely scenarios in my mind. And that detective was quiet and his voice was soft. And I could tell he was struggling to say what he needed to say. But he says, "No, there was no foul play involved." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, can you just tell me how?" And he took a deep breath and he told me, he said, "By hanging." And at that point, I didn't ask any more questions. I thanked him for contacting me. I asked him, "Is there anything else you need from me at this time?" He said, "I just need to verify your information so I can, give it to the Owen mommy. And at that point, like, there's a lot I don't remember. Like, everything seemed so surreal. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think straight. I didn't know what to do. I had to make my husband make phone calls because I could not do anything. I called one person, and I don't know why. She was the only family member on their dad's side that I could think of that, and I had other people's numbers in my phone. I just could not think straight. And I reached out to her and I called her through Snapchat. Like, I don't have her number, but I called her through Snapchat. I remember that part. But from that moment forward, nothing was the same. I wasn't the same. The way I handled things wasn't the same. My outlook on everything changed. And I'll get into that more in a later episode about all of the changes that took place and the way the grief just basically swallowed me whole for a little while, to the point that, like, I ended up quitting my job, like, just everything. And I went and I just sat on the couch, numb and crying and just not even knowing what to do. And basically, it comes down to the fact that grief changes time. Like, there's the person you were before, and then there is the person that is forced to exist after. And I think that's the part that a lot of people don't understand. So this is June, and it is Men's Mental Health Month. And so I want to highlight an organization that I think is doing, like, amazing work in the heart of this mission. Um, the organization is called, and it's a nonprofit organization. It is called the Behind the Smiles, the Darius Roberts Foundation. And this was founded by Christy Roberts, who is actually Darius's mother. She created this foundation under the painful truth that a bright smile often hides a deep silent struggle. I've met Christy, and she is an amazing and beautiful person. She puts on a lot of workshops and events to highlight just the importance of mental health and different ways you can immerse yourself into activities that align with having mental health. Sounds weird, but that's what it is. They Her nonprofit is dedicated basically to making sure that no one has to fight their battle alone. They have a gift of therapy program, and with this, they're able to, bridge the gap between wanting help and getting help. And they do that by sponsoring like the first few counseling sessions for those who are in need. They work with different providers to help make that happen. So I encourage everyone to visit behindthesmilesfoundation.org. You can, check out their mission, find resources, support their mission. I will say that last year I had the um, opportunity to attend an outreach that Christy had put together. Um, and I was honored to make a donation in Gavin's name to this program because the whole mission behind it aligned so well with the way my journey has been to where it is, where it started, where it is. There are just so many things that I aligned with what they are doing and their purpose. So I just encourage everyone to check it out and you know support it, even if it's just following their Instagram or Facebook page, and putting the word out. Um, but yeah, so that is an organization that is near and dear to my heart for very personal reasons. So I encourage you to do that, and I will at the end make sure that the link is in the description. So I want to thank you guys for sitting with me through today's episode, sharing this part of the story. It's never easy. And, as you heard in the beginning, the waves of grief still come. And some days they're a little softer, but other days, like they come crashing. But I think the most important thing is that we don't have to carry these moments alone. If there's anyone else out there navigating unexpected waves of grief, just know that I see you, I feel you, and it's okay to not be okay. So I want you guys to take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week. Bye.